Deputy Cuív.
I know you're a former Minister of Housing, and the situation in Galway is at crisis level. Reality is that the population of Galway is growing naturally by about 1,000 a year. If you divide that in house requirement, we estimate about 350 houses per annum. At the moment, the latent demand for housing, in other words, the backlog, is somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 units. Both between private and public construction, less than 300 houses will be built in Galway this year. The reality is that every week on a Monday afternoon I do a clinic, and right throughout the week I'm contacted by people who need emergency accommodation. Not even emergency accommodation is available in Galway at the moment. There's a 3-week waiting list for emergency accommodation, which is by its own definition emergency. And what people are being told is to self-fund, sleep in a sofa, or live in their cars. Similarly with the...
Minister, we'll hear the...
Well, they've been told to. Well, they've been told. What we've been told is we cannot do anything for you. You give me the options. You give me the options. You give me the options, because there are no options when somebody tells you, and this is for families, decent people. We have landlords who want to take over their properties, they're putting them out, they give them notice. People are scared. I have one person who's contacting me every week because they're due to leave the property next April, because they know there is not a HAP property available in Galway. You cannot get HAP. There's nobody taking it.
Thank you, Deputy.
Because the market is so strong.
Thank you. The time is up.
Minister, this crisis needs to be dealt with now.
Thank you. Deputy Connolly.
Minister, I'll tell you what they're telling the people of Galway. We've no place to accommodate you. That's a fact. I'm going to quote from COPE, this Assistant CEO. He said the homeless crisis in Galway is unrelenting. In his 20 years, it's the worst he's ever seen it. I've only less than 2 minutes. I won't go on quoting. It's there in today's paper. We have people on a waiting list since 2002. We have HAP is the only game in town in Galway. The last time we built a house was 2009. Yes, we've acquired some houses, and yes, earlier this year we built 14 or completed 14. That's the first local authority house since 2009. In the last few days, another young man died on our streets in the curtilage of the City Council. That's the second man to die on the streets of Galway, this time in the curtilage of the City Council in 10 months, bringing the total to 25 people who've died on our streets in the last 15 months. Now, coincidentally, almost to the day 9 months ago, you were in that chair as well when I raised this at Leaders' Questions, and you actually said, you and I often disagree, but I agree with you on this, Deputy, in relation to Galway, the crisis, the back to the developer-led development and the lack of local authority housing and the acute need to say this is an emergency, we need a master plan immediately and we need the local authority to tell us what the difficulties are. And here we are now, almost 9 months later, Minister. I could do the same speech all over again, but I won't. Except, Minister, two people are now dead and 25 are dead. And I don't like to exaggerate. I like to stick with facts. We have the most acute housing crisis in Galway. It is actually worse than Dublin. People are waiting from 2002. I'm going to finish with today's email. Somebody writing to me, 3 children, 2 of them with serious disabilities, and they're out of their home in 6 months with no property available to them because you cannot get a HAP property in Galway. Simon have repeatedly pointed this out in their research, in their documents entitled Locked Out of the Market.
Yeah, no, thank you, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to respond. This week we learned of the tragic death of a man in the grounds of Galway City Hall on Monday the 15th of October. And I want to join with the Taoiseach and others in this House of extending my sympathies and condolences to the family of the man who died. Clearly, this is a very difficult time for all of those involved, and I would ask that we respect the privacy of the family and not speculate on the circumstances of the deceased or the cause of his death. As regards the need for Minister Murphy to visit Galway City and to see the housing situation for himself, I can assure you that the Minister is fully cognisant of the housing issues and the pressures in Galway City. The Minister recently visited Galway and held discussions with senior officials in the Council on homelessness and wider housing issues. We are increasing the funding to all local authorities to provide services for those experiencing homelessness. This year, the estimated expenditure on homeless services for the West region, of which Galway City is one of 4 local authorities, is $5.2 million. This will increase in 2019. Supporting rough sleepers is a particular priority. Last month, Eamon Murphy and Minister for Health, Simon Harris, jointly launched the National Implementation Plan for Housing First. Many of those rough sleeping have requirements for significant health supports. As such, Housing First is a collaboration between the Department of Housing, the Department of Health, the HSC and local authorities. Housing First recognises that a stable home environment is critical to the success of all other interventions, and also providing the necessary supports alongside rather than in advance of a home. We can empower people to tackle the issues that result in them becoming homeless in the first place. The implementation plan will see the highly effective programme to reduce and end rough sleeping and long-term homelessness extended nationwide. The plan sets an overall target of over 660 tenancies, with individual targets for each local authority. It's one of the most significant responses by the state to date in dealing with long-term homelessness. Under the plan, 30 Housing First tenancies will be created for Galway City over the next 3 years, with a further 19 tenancies in Galway County. A tender process is already underway to deliver these tenancies. Supports for families experiencing homelessness in Galway City are also being reinforced. Galway City's Family Hub is due to open in early 2019. Galway City Council has also identified a site for the rollout of a modular hub development to be operational in the first half of next year. It's expected that 15 families will be accommodated for up to 6 months at a time on this site if necessary. The principal advantages of these units are that they are quick to erect on site, portable and redeployable elsewhere if necessary. A Pathfinder service is being put in place with a dedicated officer funded by my department to support households experiencing homelessness to identify and secure a property in the private rental market. The long-term solution to homelessness is increasing the supply of homes. I think we all agree with that. A range of measures are being progressed in this regard under Rebuilding Ireland to accelerate all types of housing, social, private and affordable. By 2021, some 50,000 new social homes will be provided, and housing output generally will be progressively increased towards the target production of 25,000 housing units per year. Galway City Council has a target to deliver 145 new social homes in 2018 and about 1,100 between 2018 and 2021 through build, acquisition and leasing initiatives. In addition, in 2018, a further 254 families or individuals will be housed through the HAP or the RAS schemes. This will bring their total delivery of social housing supports this year in 2018 to approximately 400. Can I say, Deputy, despite all of those numbers, I am well aware of the pressures in Galway, and they were there when I was a housing minister and they're still there now. There are pressures in other cities too, and what we are doing is ensuring that from a financial perspective, local authorities are supported. There should be enough emergency accommodation in every town and city in the country for individuals or families that find themselves homeless. And if there aren't, we are committed to putting those resources in place to make sure that there are.
Deputy Cuív.
Minister, there aren't. We're not making this up. It would make you cry listening to the people coming in. And the second thing, don't get the impression that a large number of the people coming in looking for somewhere are rough sleepers. Rough sleepers are a small subset who need special attention, very well aware of that. The vast majority of the people I'm coming in do not have social issues, do not have addiction issues, are not rough sleepers, have never slept rough, but are out of a house. Because the simple fact is we're up to 3,000 units short in Galway of the demand. Second thing is, the reason there is no emergency accommodation is because Galway, as you know, is a big tourist town, plus a big university town, plus a big GMIT town. There's just nowhere available. And the HAP is not the most lucrative market. There are other markets there for people, and they're availing of it. For example, I'm told there's something like 19 accommodation providers in the tourist sector. It's not all Airbnb. And they obviously have a market. Minister, the reality is that we're told that 1,100 social houses will be built by 2021. There's one step that could be taken tomorrow that would allow this to move forward at a faster pace. And the step is very simple. It's the step that you took in government when you created Irish Water, and you said you don't have to keep coming back to us, here's the money, go off and do the job. I cannot understand why local authorities are not given the money at the beginning of the year and told to do the job and not have to go back to the department 3 or 4 times, taking 59 weeks to get permission to build a house.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I hope you show the same leniency given the seriousness of the subject. Minister, I don't think you realise, and I do think you're genuine and interested, but I actually don't think you realise that it's your policy and the government's policy that's leading to the problem. You're an integral part of the problem, not the solution. Homelessness in Galway, which is out of control. These are not my words. I quoted from the Assistant CEO of COPE, and he said that the figures grossly undermine the people that are homeless because the way the figures are gathered. In addition, he said, on Monday of this week, 13 people presented homeless to one of their centres, just one. So if you keep going down the road of the market and talking about social housing under the guise of HAP, you're not going to learn and you're not going to sort out the problem. We don't want hubs. Obviously, emergency necessaries are necessary. However, what we want is a solution, and that is, what land does Galway City own? Can you tell me, what audit, what is the result of the public land in Galway? What is the difficulty building on that public land? 14 acres in Can Station, 8 of which have gone to a private person to develop without a master plan. The docks, Dyke Road, not to mention institutional land. Where is the overall plan and the commitment to build public housing on public land and to stop this scandal? We're talking about homes. And finally, Airbnb is an absolute huge part of this problem. Airbnb, you've refused to regulate. We're losing streets and houses to it in Galway. Thank you.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think the one thing we agree on is that we need to get more homes built. They need to be social homes, they need to be affordable homes and private homes, and we need to build student accommodation also, because Galway is a big university city. And a lot of the accommodation that is currently rented by students could and should be available to individuals and families. All of those things are happening, Deputy. They're not happening fast enough, but they are happening. There's a lot more student accommodation being built in Galway. There are social houses being built in Galway, and you are right, and you quote it all the time. You know, over the last 10 years or so, there was very small numbers of social houses built. We're changing that. And we are, so we do not have some kind of ideological attachment to a reliant on the private sector to solve social housing need. Quite the opposite, in fact. We have committed to tens of millions of euros to roll out one of the most ambitious social housing build programmes that the state has ever seen. And that is happening. In the meantime, we have to rely, because it takes time to build houses. In the meantime, we do have to rely on HAP and RAS schemes because there are properties available that we can accommodate families in. And that's why we're also looking to switch people from rent allowance into HAP, because it's a more secure form of tenancy. So, Deputy, it takes time to build the number of houses that we need to solve this problem in Galway, in Dublin, in Cork, in Limerick, in Waterford and elsewhere. But we are seeing a dramatic increase in the number of social houses that are being delivered and the number of private houses, many of them affordable, that are being delivered as well. What we're trying to do is deliver mixed tenure communities with a lot of extra social houses. 50,000 will have been provided under the Rebuilding Ireland scheme in the next few years, going on to provide over 100,000. And that needs to... That needs to continue to be accelerated, particularly in pressure points like Galway.